What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and it has been a minute since I've done sort of a news video. We are live right now, and Konami just announced a brand new official format called Genesys. This format is crazy. It has no Pendulum monsters, no Link monsters, and no ban list. Instead of having a ban list, it has a point system based on how good cards are. Now, this is all kind of in early access. The deck building website's kind of janky, and while you can start playing tournaments, they haven't been able to adjust the points based on players playing yet. So the first month here or so, it might be a little bit weird, but this is super exciting. Now, I do want to clarify here. I've already told chat, I've made this very clear. I knew about this format in advance, at least a little bit, and I have built a couple decks. Now, this is not a sponsored video. Konami has not told me what to say. I have not been paid. How do we prove this? What can I say to prove it's not sponsored? Fuck Maxi. See, it's not sponsored, but I still wanted to talk about it, and I do appreciate that they gave me an early access look. So let's take a look at what the Genesys format is. Here we go. So the Genesys format has a couple new rules here, maybe more than a few new rules. Let's see what it says. No Link or Pendulum monsters are allowed, and also no EMZs, of course. All other cards are allowed. There's no forbidden and limited list. We'll take a look at those point values in a moment here. Deck construction uses a point system. Some powerful cards have a point cost when building your deck. Most cards cost no points. And they really mean most. Like 95, if not 99% of cards do not have any points. So what it is basically trying to do is allow the worse decks to have access to better generic cards, while the cards that are playing more powerful non-generic stuff, more powerful engines, can't really take advantage of the really broken stuff. So we'll take a look here in a moment, but this is a format where if you're playing a bad enough deck, you can play triple Pot of Greed, triple Graceful Charity, and that kind of stuff. So, only 505 cards have points, so now we know. Tournament organizers can change the point cap for each event. Standard is 100 points, but you can do a 200-point event, you can do 50. So I asked them about this just to clarify. They can do whatever they want. They could do 0. I think 0-point decks are really cool. I messed around with a couple of those. They could do 2,000, they could do 3,000. They can really do whatever they want, but 100 is going to be the standard. And right now, it does seem like a number of the points are based around that you're in a 100-point format. So a lot of the like broken combos that exist, like Cyberstein plus some stupid shit, those are priced in a way where you can't play them both in the same deck. I believe Cyberstein is like 100 points, which means you can't use it with any other janky stuff, but you could use it to summon, I don't know, Cyber Twin Dragon or something. I don't know. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at some of these points and see what we are looking at. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these point values. And there is the Decklist website says early access. It's in early access right now. It's really janky, and also with the amount of people that are currently looking stuff up because it's brand new, it's really hard to find stuff. But let's see if I can kind of show you an example here. Okay, well, we'll come back to that. So, small indie company, it says it's early access, but yeah, it obviously doesn't work right now. There's way too many people on it. Anyway, let's take a look at an example. I was going to show you guys the Draco Tail cards to kind of show you what we're dealing with here. So, if we look at Draco Tail, we got Malulu at 5, Femina at 20, and Arthalion at 10. So, if you wanted to play Draco Tail with all of those cards at 3, you would spend what? 60 points, 90 points, and then I guess you'd have to play 2 Malulu, so 100 points right there. So Draco Tail is playable. I mean, maybe you'd cut an Arthalion. You'd probably cut an Arthalion and play 3 Malulu. I'm not really sure, but you get the idea here. You can play the decks that you want to play within reason, of course, but the newer decks are available to play, but they're not going to get access to all of the broken stuff. So if we go down here and take a look at the pot cards, for example. Now, not every pot is on here, but Pot of Desires, 20 points. Pot of Greed, 30 points. Pot of Prosperity, 40 points, which is kind of an interesting debate because that means that they think Pot of Prosperity is better than Pot of Greed, which may or may not be true. Not sure. But this means that if you are playing a bad deck, and I will show you a deck in a moment here that plays 3 Pot of Greed, you get to play 3 of this card. It is only worth 30 points. You even have points left over after doing that. You'll have 10 left over, and you'll see what we put in for those 10 points. But yeah, there's all sorts of archetypes on here, all sorts of point values. It's really important that you guys know that they are going to adjust these points as needed. And I think they even told us, at least, that got this information in advance a little bit. They're going to be doing those, like, I don't know when, but they said pretty often, perhaps even more often than like a regular ban list would come. I'm not sure what week they've decided on or whatever, but these are going to be updated regularly. I've seen some people debating about, some of these cards being at the wrong values, and I think it needs some adjustments. It needs some adjustments for sure. There are some cards that are older that I feel are way overvalued on the point list, and cards that are newer that are way undervalued. But, we're the guinea pigs. We're the guinea pigs here. But you can kind of see, so here's 100, right? Skill drain. So a lot of the floodgates are at 100. So you can, if you play a bad deck, you can play 1 skill drain in your entire deck. And keep in mind that these points values go across your main, extra, and side deck. So yeah, you really are going to have to make things work. There are a couple cards that are like low value that are decent that I think are going to be staples in this format. DD Crow, for example, is 0 points. It's one of the only hand traps that's at 0 points. So you can kind of look into that. 6th Sense, 65 points. It's a card that's currently banned. So you can use 1 copy in your deck if you want to, maybe in a graveyard strategy. I honestly think 6th Sense is like probably power crept. I think it's way too slow, but maybe in this format, it would be viable. Max C is 50 points. So you could play 2 Max C. I don't think that's probably the best way to go. I think if you are using these higher point values, it should be the cards that you're building the deck around. But we'll see what people end up doing. I'm very excited to see what deck lists people actually come up with. Mirage of Nightmare, 10 points. I saw a list floating around that was like paleo with Mirage of Nightmare at 3 copies. Draw a bunch of paleos, discard them, summon them from grave. That kind of stuff is kind of crazy. Mistake, another floodgate at 100. But the vast majority of cards are zeros. So, look this over, kind of see stuff like, do the dangers need to be here at these values? I don't know. I would like to see some of the hand traps brought down. If we take a look here at like the Ghost Girls, Ash Blossom is 7, I think. No, Ash Blossom's 15. So if you want to play 3 copies of Ash Blossom, you have almost taken half of your available points. You've taken 45. So that's kind of interesting. Astral Karibo is at 3. So there's like some random cards. Like, why is Assault Synchron 5? Why does that exist? I think I'd like to see some of the hand traps get brought down a little bit. Veiler. Like, what is Veiler on here? Let me see. Effect Veiler, 7. Effect Veiler is 7. So that's a little better. Veiler's a little easier to fit into your deck. 7 isn't too bad. And if you play 3, you know what you get. 21. There's different things on here that may or may not make sense, but I think that for a starting point, it's okay. We can see here the Senjujin is 33, so you could splash Millennium. And then actually, this is a really good example. So Senjujin is 33 points, which means that you could play pure Millennium and you'd be fine. Or you can splash this engine into another deck that doesn't play cards of a lot of other points. So a lot of the cards that are like splashable kind of fall into that category where you can play like a couple of them, but not all of them. Look at this, by the way. All the tier limit names are 50. You could do like they do in the TCG, Merly, Havness, no Kit Kalos, or you could do like 1 Merly, 1 Kit Kalos. I don't know if those are actually going to be viable though. And thank God, Tenpai can't work. I mean, Tenpai just doesn't work, which is fantastic. Fuck Tenpais. Let me show you a couple decks that I've made so you can get an idea of what like 100 points can get you. So the first deck that I want to take a look at, of course, is Fabled. Now, the Fiendsmith cards are all 0 points. So Engraver is 0, Tract is 0. And the reason is there's no link monsters, so you can't actually go into like the real Fiendsmith combo. There's no Requiem, there's no sequence and stuff like that. Theoretically, you could still summon these fusion monsters, just not with a link monster. So these cards are 0, and that allows you to play them in a deck that actually can use them for the light fiend support. So for example, if you were playing Magical Muskets, even though you wouldn't have the link 1, you could still theoretically play 3-tracked 3 engraver. And that's why if you look at the list, there's no like Malice cards on the list, and that's because there are no links. So I know some people have theorized using the Malice cards for a lot of material for other stuff. Maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't, but if it does happen, they'll adjust it, hopefully. Anyway, so in this deck, which is 100 points, the point cards in here are Graceful Charity, which are 40 points each, and then Chaos Angel, which is 20 points. All of these other cards, all of the Fabled cards, all of the extra deck stuff, Black Rose Dragon, Stardust Charge Warrior, everything else is 0 points. The vast majority of cards are 0 points. Because we're playing a lower powered deck with Fabled, that's why we have access to powerful cards like Graceful Charity. Now, if you're playing a good deck, we were looking at Draco Tail earlier, they can't play Graceful Charity, because all of their points are used for engine. But it will be interesting to see what people are cooking with. We're only like an hour or two past the announcement, so it's still pretty early on. But this is what I was able to come up with ahead of time, just to give you guys an example of kind of what a deck list could look like, and also why cards like Fiendsmith, Engraver, and Tract don't have any points. It's so that they can be used in the decks that they're supposed to be used in. The other deck that I wanted to show you guys was Exosisters. So unsurprisingly, the Exosister cards were all nothing. The Artama Sakitama, those weren't worth anything. DD Crow wasn't worth anything. Here's a couple trap cards that aren't worth anything. But the points in this deck are going towards Pot of Greed. This card is 30, so we have 90 points there. Triple Pot of Greed in Exosisters. We were never not drawing Martha, right? And then also Chalice. Chalice is 5 points. So right there, we round out our 100 points. I think that the idea is going to be to find what the going second cards in this format are, because right now a lot of them are worth points. Regeki, for example, is worth 7 points. So if you have 3 of those, worth 21, and that takes up like a huge portion of your deck. And that's kind of a good example too. If you see some of the point values on cards and they're like 40, that means you couldn't play fucking chat. That means you couldn't play 2 of the 40 cards like Graceful Charity and then 3 Regekis. You couldn't do that all in the same deck. But so that's kind of where it's balanced around. When I first saw the list, I was very confused about the lower point values. But like I said, when you start building the decks, it makes a little bit more sense. Let's take a look at the other deck that I came up with, Frog Paleo. So I have not actually come up with the last couple points in this deck. This was like 150 points just to show you what you can get with a couple more points. And yes, it does play Frog the Jam. So in this deck, we have 20 points for Totally Awesome, 33 points each for the Swap Frogs, and 60 points for Ronin Totem. And here's kind of where, when I was building this deck specifically, I was just like, these cards seem a little high. I mean, I understand the point, the idea behind Ronin Totem at 60 because, Ronin Totem is a pretty good card, but like, this is just ridiculous. This is way too many points for these frog cards. I could see maybe Totally Awesome being like 50 and then these cards being like 20 or 15, but this should not be 60. But I hope, the idea is, and I think it's easy to say this now because we're optimistic, because ideally the regular ban list does this too, and it doesn't always, but ideally they're going to hit the cards that are really popular and hit as in increase the points and lower the points of less popular cards. So I'm hoping in a couple months, Swap Frog is brought down. I think that the Sprite cards are really expensive too. I think I remember seeing that. Oh, Sprite Starter is 20. I thought other Sprite. Okay. I think the point values have changed a little bit over like the last week, so I might be a little bit behind, but Sprite Starter is 20. So if you wanted to play Sprites with Frogs, maybe I should have shown that. Okay. I feel like Sprites changed a little bit because I don't remember that. So you could just play Sprite Frogs. Maybe I should have built that. Whatever, but you get the idea. Sprite Starter is 20, so if you wanted to play Sprites pure, you would have to use 60 of your points towards that, or maybe you only played 2. I mean, it was semi-limited at a time. I think it was even limited, so it's really up to you. And I think what we're going to see with a lot of these deck lists is cards being played at less copies than normal, because if something is really searchable, maybe you only need to play 1 or 2. So we could see meta decks that are playing less copies of their best cards, and maybe that'll allow some of the lesser known cards to be played more, which could be pretty cool. But like I said, it's all just like optimism here. Like, I think this format's really cool. I think it's made for people like me that were struggling to get back into the TCG because it was overwhelming. I know people have said, I've seen a couple posts from people saying like, why no link monsters? Of course, people don't like pendulums, get rid of pendulums, but why no link monsters? And it's just because like, not everyone likes it. I know it sounds weird if you currently play Yu-Gi-Oh! Because Link monsters aren't really complained about anymore, but there are still like a lot of people that haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh! In 10, 15, 20 years that do not like pendulums or links just on principle. So for that reason, I think it makes sense to get rid of those. It's a lower barrier to entry because you don't have to learn 2 new mechanics. If you think about it, like, timeline wise, this format is only using mechanics from Xyz and earlier. So Xyz is like over a decade old, you know, pendulums are over a decade old too. So Xyz is like 15 years old. So a lot of people know about those cards and are fine with them that don't like pendulums and don't like link monsters. Let's keep that in mind here. So that's kind of why they did that, or at least why I think they did that. That is Genesys format. Really excited about this. It is kind of coming at a weird time because I'm currently, and I might make a video about this as well, I'm currently getting back into the TCG. I've gone to locals the last couple weeks. I've been having a blast. So if this released like 4 months ago, I would have been like, oh, finally I can play again. But I am still going to check it out. It is very appealing playing Exosister with 3 Pot of Greed. I think that is hilarious. Overall, I think as a new format, this is one of the coolest ones that Konami has ever put together. Like I said, not sponsored, blah, 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 fuck Maxi. But really, I think that this is tackling the game in a totally new way that we haven't seen before, which I personally think is very interesting. So if we just one more time go back over to the list, I will link this in the description. Do you think the deck list ever came up? Yeah, the deck list website is a little rough. I don't recommend using it to build a deck list. It's just there to help out. But they did say that it's in like early access, so I'm hoping it gets a little better. I'd like to make some content with this. Let me know in the comment section though. What do you guys think about this? This is a huge announcement. Other card games have tried the point values before successfully, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I think a lot of the games that use point values, the point values don't change. It's like inherent to the card. This is how much this card is worth. So the different part about this one is that everything is worth different points and they could be changing as time goes on, which is kind of interesting. But what I think that this is going to do, hopefully, is allow newer sets that have archetypes that normally wouldn't be played in the TCG because they're not quite there. This maybe allows them to be played in a format that's real and is officially supported because, you know, newer archetypes that come out aren't always good enough to really compete against everything. But if they're allowed to play some of the broken cards that better decks aren't allowed to play, maybe they could get a couple tops. Oh, also, there are going to be some events that are already running these that are going to have some pretty cool prizes. Dark End Dragon, SJC prize card, and giant card, Pot of Greed. Here's another thing that I had up. So how the invitationals are going to work on weekends. They're going to have little pods of 16 players, and then the first and second place finishers are going to play in a big tournament with all the other first and second place finishers on that Sunday. So that'll be pretty cool. Oh, first North American full-on Genesys YCS is coming in 2026. So we don't actually know where it is. So I'm interested to see what people do with this. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about it. Yeah, I normally don't make news stuff, but I wanted to talk about this one. I'll catch you guys later. I forgot how to end videos.